I'd like to call the meeting to order. Board of Leavenworth County Commissioners, I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to start with a moment of silence. I'd like everyone to remember the Corporal Dan Abramovitz family and all these colleagues he worked with during this time. Roll call, start with Commissioner Stevens. Here. Commissioner Shimke.
Here.
Commissioner Smith present. Commissioner Culverson.
Here.
And Commissioner Cause.
Here.
All right, all commissioners are present. We'll start with public comment. We have public comment on agenda items beginning at this time, and we'll start with Sarah Carey. Is there a Sarah Carey here for public comment? Then we'll move to Jim Tingle.
You want me to ask if they're out in the hallway?
Maybe they're in the hallway. I'm sorry.
Was it in there?
Sarah Carey was the first on the list. I'm sure Becky could have heard us.
The top three on the list are not here, so Swearingen.
Okay, then we'll move down to Holly Swearinger.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Holly Swearingen from 24921 Loring Road, and I oppose the passing of the tri-hole SUP. I grew up on Loring Road, and my grandparents babysat me during the day. During lunch, we always went with our neighbor Pete Millerette to lunch every day. Melba O'Connor helped me make my Halloween costumes, and Ruthie Hughes helped me with my 4-H projects. This road is my family and my community. And when I was little, we used to be able to play on the road, and anymore that is not possible for the new kids that are on the road. There are big cranes that come by and trucks that speed down the road that are coming in and out of all of these all of these new SUPs that are passing on the road. I have a major concern for our water. We are on well water with an underground aquifer. There is no other water source that is coming from the city. Holes have stated that they have a Johnny on the spot up there, as well as an RV camper parked there. I wonder where their water is coming from and where that product is being dumped and disused, and how that is affecting my water source as well as my communities. There was also a letter on March 27th, 2020, that that needed Tri-Hole to have a memo for the turning on the road. And there was not another letter received until April 17th, and so they violated that by not having that letter in place with an engineer by David Lugan. So this allowed them to illegally operate for 2 months, and as a taxpayer, I am worried about where my tax money is coming and going and how these violations are affecting that. With that, they also stated that in the letter that there is a salvage area that they wanted a screening around. And this is not an SUP for a salvage or junkyard. So if our T's and I's are not crossed and dotted, how are we allowing this SUP to pass and not be penalized? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Roger Swearinger's next.
Roger Swearingen, 24921 Loring Road. So here we are again, kicking this same old can down the same old pothole-filled Loring Road. As I've pointed out in the last 2 meetings involving this SUP, it was a matter of time before someone was hurt or injured with what goes on this property. And it happened. As a certified home and commercial property inspector, I recently worked with a client on purchasing a salvaging and recycling site. The regulations and protocols for these properties are significant. The holes have addressed none of these. Plus, it's against county zoning laws to have any kind of salvage operation outside an industrial zoned area. That's the law. Another county ordinance prohibits in-home operated equipment rental facilities in a residential area. Let's look at the name. Tri-Hull Crane Rentals. That's the law. The SUP application for this property encompasses the whole 40 acres. In that encompassed 40 acres is a motocross racetrack. County law states that anything commercial racetrack or on a commercial property must be licensed. They are not. That's the law. I know there's a thought of tabling this matter again to wait on the state road study. Why? Almost every part of what they do on this property encompassing the SUP violates county law. Why was the county already out to redo the culverts and widen the road before this was even passed? We were told by your engineers that the road was adequate, but the workers out there said the engineers called for improvements and widening of our road already. It's beginning to smell a little swampy in here. Rule on this according to the county laws in place. End this now. Every resident on our road except one is against this. No reason to consider it any longer. Would you want this in your neighborhood? I don't think so.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment on agenda items. Mr. Loffer, is there any administrative business this time?
A couple of items. The first one you have on your agenda in your packet was a request from the Sheriff's Office to assist in funding related to an investigation. The Sheriff is here.
Okay. Sure.
Good morning.
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 Congratulations.
Thank you. So in December of last year, we were contacted by the treasurer regarding what essentially amounted to a theft of funds. And since then have been involved in an investigation working with the treasurer's office and outside partners. The goal of the investigation is to determine with certainty the amount of funds that were taken, and if at all possible, who's responsible for taking those funds. At this point, I believe that our office and the partners that we have engaged in or engaged with have completed everything that we can do to that end. We have engaged several accounting firms to ask about next steps, what the common practices are, and in doing so, we did engage with one firm who recommended essentially a forensic accounting of the practices therein over a period of time, I believe going back to 2018. Prior to submitting this letter, I did have communication with the county treasurer advising of this, and it was my understanding at that time that she was in support and welcomed such an audit. It is not my intention to, especially if we're in an elected office, to insert myself in their business. It's not my intention to question her practices or the practices of her office. And I'm not alleging any malpractice. My goal here is to determine whether or not a crime did occur and to what extent and who is responsible. We are certain a crime occurred. We just don't know to what extent or completely yet to who's responsible. This is a an in-depth and intrusive audit, and it's something that I'm not funded for, number one, but number two, will require the cooperation of the treasurer and the office. So the intent was, basically, it's. I think we have a couple of decisions: is will we be able to move forward? And I know that's going to require cooperation from the treasurer's office. And then secondly, is the fee that's proposed acceptable to the board to fund?
I have a question. If this audit is not performed, is there any way of actually knowing for sure what the amount of funds that were taken?
I think we've got it narrowed down pretty well, but we can't give you an exact amount.
Hence, the request for the audit.
The audit would, and I can't say that it will, I'd say that it will hopefully give us a more specific amount that's been taken.
And I understand, is the amount that you're understanding is $9,118.31? Is that?
At a minimum, yeah.
At a minimum.
We are very confident in that amount in our own research that we did in our office based on the recommendations of our contracted auditor. And this audit that he is proposing does not guarantee anything above or beyond what our previous audits have done.
So are you opposed to doing the audit?
I'm not opposed to actually being audited. I'm just opposed to what they're proposing because it's nothing more than what we've already had done. I mean, it even says in here.
My understanding was when this all first arose that there was an audit that was going to take place, and then somehow that never happened.
Well, I spoke with them, and they said that they could only do a review of procedures and policies and procedures. And they gave us all the recommendations for that helped us close the loophole that caused the theft. We have reviewed all of the motor vehicle transactions to ensure that there are no more missing funds. If there were missing funds due to these types of transactions, a person would not be able to renew their tags. And we've gone a whole year cycle. And nobody's not been able to renew their tag. So that just confirms even more that all of the issues have been addressed.
But if we don't do the audit, you really have no way of knowing that amount even is the $9,000. It could be more.
No, I told you I'm very confident of that.
But do you really have
Do
any
you
way
want
of
to
knowing?
spend $72,000 to find $10,000?
Janice, so that is the fair question. So what I was going to ask was, I agree with you. I don't know that, statistically whether there's a 10% chance or a 20% chance that number could move a lot. I'd actually be more in favor of it to find who did it, because I feel like we've now become a world where whether you're a small business or whether you're the county, it's cheaper to settle.
Well,
It's cheaper to just pay out than actually
unfortunately,
fight
that
the
is
good
true,
fight.
and that's
And
probably
that's
what will
unfortunate.
happen with this case. But
Get probation.
I am very confident in the transactions in the treasurer's office because this was one loophole we were not aware of, and it was caused by voided transactions. But every day we are basically audited by the state of Kansas to do an electronic transfer of all funds for the transactions done that day. We are audited by the county clerk every day. Their books have to match our books. And it's the same way in every audit. And that's why they audit, our contracted auditor audits both sides. If I truly thought that the theft went beyond this, I would have no problem with it. But to audit 2 more years, well, actually 2 years of audited work that's already been done, and then one 2020 for this year and then have it redone by the contracted auditor makes no sense to me. And it puts a horrible load on my office.
So your letter that you sent to us says, it is the opinion of the County Treasurers Association that this audit goes against Kansas law that makes the Office of the County Treasurer independent of the direct control of the Board of County Commissioners. So are you saying that it's not legal for us to approve this audit?
I would have to question that, yes. They don't, the individuals or county treasurers I have spoken with do not agree that it's at least legal to audit the motor vehicle fund, because according to a Supreme Court decision, the county or the county Board of County Commissioners or anyone else has no authority or oversight of that fund.
So you have that in writing?
Yeah, it's in a Supreme Court decision.
So that you contacted the Kansas Association of State Treasurers, and they've indicated that this would be illegal. I guess, this is to the county administrator, I guess before we would move ahead, I would want to think that we need to have a legal opinion on whether it would be legal for us to proceed.
And that's kind of the point I was going to bring up is a couple things. One, I agree with the statement, I don't want to spend $78,000 to find 10. Another thing is, from working here over the years, I'm pretty sure the Treasurer's Office is audited every year. So, thirdly, if the elected official, the treasurer, asks for this audit or is working with the Sheriff's Department and asks for the audit, that's one thing. But I'm confused as to why we as the county commission are involved in the investigation to begin with. She's an elected official just like us.
I agree with Commissioner Culbertson.
She's an elected official just like us. So I'm confused why we're being asked to get involved with this. If she wants to work with the Sheriff's Office and ask for 3 years of audit, then that's one thing. But how did we get in the middle of this? I don't understand.
Well, Jeff, if I asked if we could have our board audited as well, are you good with that? Does that make that better?
If we could what?
Go ahead and audit the
Go ahead and audit the
Board of
county commission at the
too.
same time.
Yeah.
So the board is involved simply as a funded mechanism. The county is the victim in this case, in that it has lost money. I've been in contact with the administrator, and honestly, I tend to agree with the viewpoint of several here today that is it wise to spend that much money for that much of a loss? But indications were that this is something that we wanted to go forward with, so this is why it's been presented. Again, I'm not asking the board to be involved in any investigation aspect of it. Just is this what the board wants to do and to approve the funding mechanism for? Absolutely, it's going to involve cooperation with the Treasurer's Office. And in earlier communication, it was my understanding that we were on board to move forward with this request.
Well, I was on board until I read it all.
Okay, well,
And I didn't see that we were going to get more than what we've had from previous auditors. I am completely open to anybody going downstairs and reviewing through the clerk's office, reviewing any of my revenue or expenditures. Even Mark, I'm sure, could run any type of financial report from my office. I'm totally open to that. I mean, and there are documented audits downstairs, but to go over 2 years of audits that's already been done that doesn't appear to offer any further information than what our current audit reports have.
But Janice, I no offense. I mean, I think our current auditing practices, I'd question, because this still occurred under current auditing practices.
Well, and like I said,
these
this was a
loopholes haven't
loophole.
been exposed by some of these groups, and this isn't the first time it's happened. So I think a third party.
I think this is the first time it's happened in the treasurer's office.
You've never had theft in the treasurer's office
No,
since you've been
and
here?
neither has the previous county treasurer that I'm aware of.
And
This
I think
is
it's
a
about
loophole in-
perception of people out in the community.
Uh-huh.
If we are requested by the Sheriff's Department that he does a forensic audit of your department, and then we are told that you don't want that, I think the perception it creates out in the community is that we have something to hide. I think your office should be completely open, and we should have the books completely open, transparency, And yes, it's a lot of money to spend on an investigation, but the sheriff says he can't assure us that there's not more money. He doesn't know any way to assure us unless we go through with the investigation. And for the people of our county to know the integrity of your office, as far as this thief has been, if we can bring him to justice, I think sometimes it's required. And
This is Commissioner Carr.
Go ahead.
I think that we are stepping way out of bounds here by implying that there is any malfeasance on the part of our county treasurer. I am going to say that we have engaged an auditor. And that auditor, unless you are saying that we have an auditor that really doesn't know what they're doing, has their work been defective? Because what I'm saying is that there has never been any indication whatsoever that there is anything wrong with any of the treasurer's finances and et cetera, with how they do their investments or anything else. The only thing that has happened is a theft was reported to, but that happened in the motor vehicle fund. That there was a loophole that enabled somebody to do that, where basically it was invisible, even to the state of Kansas, when they were reviewing the motor vehicle fund, because everything matched up. Those were voided transactions that were cash transactions. Those were voided, and there were individuals that did not realize that, and they were issued their tax. So that's the only place that it's been seen that it happened. There is full transparency. We have a full audit done every year, and anybody is welcome to come and review it.
And isn't that audit done by a third party every year?
Yes.
It's an independent auditor,
So-
yes.
We have our bridges reviewed too, and you've seen how that goes. So.
well, and I just responding to that, I need to respond to that because if you feel like there was any implied
Wrongdoing.
statement that I was implying that there's malfeasance in the treasurer's office, that is completely incorrect. But I was saying that the community and the county at large, it's a perception issue. And we also, you've admitted yourself, you have no way of knowing if that's the actual number, the 9,100. You're confident that it is, but unless we do an actual audit of the department, like the sheriff has requested, we can't know that for sure. So I think out of an abundance of caution, we should proceed with a...
Well, Mike, I think and I agree with you, Janice, I think the number's probably not going to move a lot one way or the other. Apparently I'm the only one that's curious who did it. This can help us with that, in all seriousness, and you can have the greatest protocols in the world, and I'm not suggesting that you don't. There's still immoral people, believe it or not. Just everybody out there, that's real.
Well, there is
There are bad
information
people.
that could assist in that all of a sudden is unavailable. So,
This Commissioner Carr.
Go
I
ahead.
have one more. If we are talking, this audit from another auditing firm is being called to be conducted at the exact same time as things are happening within the treasurer's office that can disrupt the operations of the treasurer's office. That's number one. Number two, we have another audit coming up by the auditor that we have. I'm certain that we could expand a little bit the scope of that audit, and it would not cost $72,000.
I would welcome that. I have no problem with that. I just, at this time in my office, he wants to do this audit immediately, and it doesn't offer any guarantee that they're going to find how much it was or who did it, and there's really no way that can be done. Even the previous auditor that gave us the recommendations to close that loophole told us there is no way to determine who did that.
Janice, your department, no question, has been through the ringer.
Yes.
I mean, since the pandemic, the volume of work, we can't thank you and your staff enough. There's truly no question about it. And I think
you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Timing is important too, and there's never a good time. But whether it's now or whether it's 90 days, I mean, those things I think can all be discussed and needs to be. You need to have input on that. And I don't know if we went out to competitive bid and we looked at 3 to 5 organizations and this was the best bid we could get. But I truly question who's doing some of our auditing practices now, just like I'd question some of the people inspecting our bridges. I mean, I'm here to question, good, bad, or otherwise.
So the timing of the audit is really not important to me. This is what was I didn't oppose it in that from the treasurer's office there's always been a where are we at, and it's very important to her. To me, it doesn't matter when it's done. Again, the goal is to identify the loss and to help identify who's responsible. These are numbers, so if it's something that's put back month, 2 months, 3 months, when it's not so busy for the treasurer's office, I think that's something we can certainly work with the treasurer on. But I don't believe there's a hard and fast that has to be done now, just for the sake of doing it.
Seems like we'd want to do it in a timely manner.
It's been a year. Timely manner's gone.
Out the window.
This was a year ago.
But who found
I would have welcomed this probably a year ago, but to add 3 more years of audit on top of me at tax time, and then another audit by our contracted auditor.
Can I ask this, Mark, when did this first come up?
Oh, I don't recall the exact date that it was
It's been a while.
identified. It has been a while, but
December 16th.
I do want to clarify something. There's a misperception about what our annual audit does and what a forensic audit does. A forensic audit will go through and analyze every transaction that was completed during that time frame in the treasurer's office. An annual audit does a sampling of transactions. So they don't take the time to go through every single transaction. That's why there's a huge difference in cost. 1, 2, they're proposing 3 years. I don't know if $73,000 is a good expenditure to identify 10,000, but that's what the cost is, and I don't challenge that. I think that's probably the true cost of doing the audit. The audit that we do annually may identify 5 or 10% of the transactions done and look at those. That's it. That's what an annual audit does. They're looking for whether or not there's any financial misstatement in our books, and we do a very good job with that. We have not had any recently, so that's not their job and that's not their duty. And I think you probably will find that if you don't do this now, which is fine, you're probably looking at like April of next year, I would guess, because these firms are accounting firms, and when is their busiest time of the year? January, February, March, April. So that's just to put that out there, but I think there was discussion about an audit earlier, back in December when this was identified, and
It was not
I think
discussed
one of
as
the
a 3-year
reasons
audit.
I think one of the reasons why we put that off was that the sheriff's investigation was ongoing.
Who found the problem? Who identified the problem?
I
We
believe
did,
it's-
and we reported it immediately.
And that was because somebody's tags, they weren't registered,
No,
but
actually,
they had a
we had a
sticker.
transaction that was in the safe,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a void transaction, which involves cash, and the cash was clipped to the documentation for the void, and it was gone the next morning, and we knew that it was in the safe the night before. And that's what triggered us looking into all of the voids that had been done, and that's when we found that I think there were 6 or 8, I'd have to count them, there were 6 or 8 voided transactions that were never completed and the cash was gone for it. And that was the loophole.
Okay.
I would propose, because it's a state fund, if you would like that fund audited, we can contact the Department of Revenue because it is a state fund. There has been nothing to indicate on the tax side or the financial side that there is any missing money. My abstracts always balance, and they would not, if there was missing money, the abstracts would not balance.
We've identified how much. I mean, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
The question is whether it's more or less, but
And you identified it before the audit for that year took
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
So
and that's what I
The
that's when I
nature
met
of
with
this
that
doesn't make
auditor.
sense to me. The elected official, the treasurer, brought the problem to light. It hadn't gone through the audit yet by the third party, so that probably would have brought it to light. So I'm just not understanding why we're asking.
But
for
the
3
audit,
years.
if the audit did its job, would still find that there was $9,000 in error. It's still not going to find who did it.
No,
We
but
keep
it wouldn't
missing
find the
points.
problem.
And that's why
That's
the
what I'm
sheriff
focused
is
on.
here.
Right,
That's
correct.
why the sheriff is here.
And
And he's requesting that we fund this audit. There should be no question we should fund this and let him proceed with his audit. That is
And
absolutely.
the other question I'd have, and Janice, this is maybe for your association, but I'm like, we're a big operation. There's tens of millions of dollars that flows through the county, and you're the financial arm of that. And again, I'm not questioning how great a job you do or your team does, those that are doing the job the right way. But there's protocols that, we don't have in place that banks do, and I question why that is. And we should have those same kind of protocols. I mean, we should be as stringent, in my opinion, as a commerce bank. I know that's up to your discretion, but
And we have
you may
changed.
not know what you don't know, and that's what sometimes these
Well, that's right,
organizations
and
can help us with.
Because of this loophole, it brought those protocols to light, and those have all changed. Our whole routine in our business office has changed. I've added a camera installed over the safe. I could tell you a lot of security measures that we've taken since this time that were not in place before.
Do you think a third-party forensic accountant might even help us put better protocol in place?
I would have no problem, with someone reviewing our protocols. I mean, that's actually what our auditor did, was reviewed our protocols and procedures. And we implemented all of those, and even some of our own. We added additional safes for timing factors. We've added additional cameras. I feel like I've done all that I can do, and I don't want it to appear like I'm opposed to an audit. I think that the taxpayers would question, too, why you're spending $72,000 for less than $10,000 missing. And I think that's something that I have to worry about, and they'll either reelect me or they won't. But I think it needs to be feasible. This expenditure needs to be feasible for what is missing.
Yeah, I'm all for an audit for the year we're talking about, but I think it needs to be reasonable. Yeah, I'm all for an audit, but let's put it in perspective.
I personally think that the sheriff has requested what he's requested, and I think we shouldn't second guess him. We should just approve it, and he proceed with his what he's requesting.
This is Commissioner Cos. With all due respect to Sheriff Dedeke, and I very much respect our Sheriff Dedeke.
And I do as well.
What he was asked to do was to investigate a theft. I think that if it goes beyond that, and it is not within his scope to investigate it without the county or the sheriff's department paying for a full-blown audit, then perhaps I don't understand how anything more is going to be resolved when the clerk reviews the transactions. They work together to make sure everything balanced. That we can't, that paying $72,000 for an audit is not going to identify, obviously, who took the money. And so are we going to also audit every department in the county?
Sure.
Are we going to look at every single department in the county as opposed to just the treasurer's office?
Well, I think
But Vicki, to your point, we keep seeming to go circles around. Again, it's a lot of money. I'm not questioning that. I think if we wanted to ask anybody in the room or those that tune in once a week, what they think about how the county spends money, I'm guaranteeing we get a lot of feedback, and do daily. Correct. Again, I don't think the amount's going to change. It's how much is it going to cost in order to get to the answer. And I think the only way we're going to get the answer as to who did it is through a forensic accountant, not through our annual audit practices. And again, I'll be the first one to say it. We've had bridges inspected. I'm ready to start firing anybody that doesn't do a good job. If we pay them for a job and they don't do it, then I'm ready to look for another resource. So let me make that perfectly clear.
Okay. Now, Sheriff, what are the chances of actually finding who did this through this audit? Is there a good chance that we would be able to find out who took the money?
My understanding in speaking with the firm, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably a 5 in finding out who is directly involved. As far as finding out the exact amount that was taken, it's probably a 9 or 10.
So how, in looking at, I'm curious as Commissioner Cos, in looking at things outside of the motor vehicle fund, so is the implication that there has been other theft outside of the motor vehicle fund through the county treasurer's office? Is that what is being asserted?
What I'm doing here this morning, Commissioner, is simply meeting with the victim of a crime. The victim is Leavenworth County. The board is the representative of the county. I am at essentially a point or crossroads in the investigation where my office can proceed no further and I can provide no clear certainty beyond what I have stated this morning if we stop. If the victim would like to dig deeper to determine the correct amount or the true amount, or confirm the amount that we believe it is, and possibly identify or help identify who may be responsible through a series of procedures or whatever, this is what I present to you. Obviously, I have no authority, absent court orders, to go into the Treasurer's office and partake in this undertaking on my own. I'm going to require the assistance and the cooperation of the Treasurer's office. I am not making any accusations of malfeasance of office or anything like that. I believe I have a good relationship with the Treasurer, always have, and I look forward to continuing that relationship. There have been other thefts that we have investigated. I don't believe it's going to be related to this. This is a standalone investigation.
And I agree with everything you said, except I also think that the county treasurer department is the victim. They're the ones that lost the money. They're the ones that brought it to light. She's an elected official. She has her own authority. I'm just saying she brought this up. If she's asking for 3 years, then that's up to her. If she's asking for 1 year, that's up to her. I'm confused at why we're in the middle of this.
The sheriff made that clear earlier, that we're just the funding mechanism.
Right, but she also is an elected official, and so
But
we're going
the
to
sheriff's
pay the bill.
investigating a crime.
Yeah, we're gonna pay the bill, but she's the county treasurer is the one that's asking for the investigation. So
all we
what do
need
we
to do, to me, it's just a rubber stamp. We give him the authority to proceed with this investigation. We don't even know if this person is perhaps still working for the county. I mean, we have no idea.
We don't know who took it.
Right.
That's why we.
So why would we? I mean, for the people of Leavenworth County, when they're looking at transparency, accountability, and we want to know that you have a squeaky clean government here, you need to follow through on what the sheriff's requesting.
There have been 2 to 3 people that have been terminated in that time range. And there was no theft before that or after the time that those individuals left.
were those employees here 3 years?
Yes.
Exactly 3 years, or is that where the 3 years came
Not
from?
all of them, not all of them. And I really can't get into detail, but all I can tell you is that there have been people that have come and gone, and since that time, there have been no thefts.
I'm just trying to figure out where the 3 years came from. Andy,
Well, I don't know either because the theft was in December
I believe that is just
2019.
a standard procedure for the forensic interview to
Don't look for
to
anomalies
establish
over a period of time.
anomalies.
And one thing I will follow up with what Commissioner Shimke said, when this audit takes place, whatever deficiencies that they show us, then we can actually use those to build our processes going forward. So it not necessarily is a waste of money to proceed this way because we'll know where the holes are in our system.
Did you say the state would also provide an audit like this?
I said I would be willing to contact the state to provide an audit of that fund.
Do you feel good about the state's wherewithal, Doug?
I mean, they audit us every day, but...
That's a loaded question, Commissioner Shimke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to answer that with a question. Answer a question with a question on that.
Fair enough.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cos.
Kansas Department of Administration to look at, I'm just more concerned about the $72,500. And if we could get another entity that could absorb the cost.
Well, it sounds like, the concern with the expense, everyone understands. I think if we wanted to challenge the sheriff and the administrator, let's say, to revise or make another proposal, or can we visit with more forensic accounting firms and figure out, is there a way to narrow the scope and reduce the cost and get the cost down to ultimately answer what we're all trying to solve for here, which is who did it, and are they still here, and what can we do to make the county better? I mean, ultimately, that is the ask
Or
at
could
this
we
time.
actually expand,
I'm all for
you
it.
know, with the auditor that we have?
Well, I don't know. Again, going back
Expand
to
our service.
the current service, I'd question.
So,
Kind of like our bridge
and
inspections. But
excuse me, my concern with that is that the current auditor is a contract employee, essentially. It's a contractor of this. From the investigation side, you want an independent, outside,
Right.
unbiased point of view.
truly disinterested, right?
Okay.
So,
Like I said, just the cost is what is, I think, is of a concern with everyone.
And
So.
And Janice, to your point, if when we talk about expanding it, I mean, I think we have tried to look internally. I mean, we've looked at, we've done vulnerability risk assessments. We've looked at, I mean, from technology, I mean, across the board, we're trying to find out, is there anything that we're doing wrong? Is there anything we can be doing better? As far as I understand it, I mean, 99-point-something% of the financial transactions happen with your office, so there's not a lot of other places that we have as much risk, at least financially. But yes, if there are more audits that we can deploy, I'm fully in support of it, elected or not. Like I said, I'd happily put the board under the same.
And just to, I think, add to what was said earlier, in working with our partners at the state, different agencies, their capabilities have been tapped to. We've got from them what we've been able to get from them. And when asked next steps, you know, it was the conclusion of everybody that a forensic and accounting would be in order. And then when asked, you know, recommendations, we provided a list of 5 or 6 that routinely do this for municipalities and are extremely competent. We reached out to all those. Essentially, there was one firm that was willing to take this on, realizing the scope of it, and that is the firm that we've presented here today.
this is Commissioner Cos.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also curious from when I was reading the letter of engagement, the proposed services and things, it appeared to me that the only person who would receive the audit would be the sheriff's department, and that we would not be actually, that it's not going to be shared with everyone else, the results. So is there a commitment to make sure that that is shared with the Board of County Commissioners and the Treasurer's Office and the Clerk's Office? And then my other question is, well, that's number one.
So to answer your question, again, I'm approaching this from the investigatory standpoint. Typically, investigations are not open public record. They're not evidence or documents obtained during investigation are held close to the breast for the integrity of the investigation. So while the investigation was active, definitely not. I would not be willing to provide that to anybody outside the scope of the investigation.
Right, but following.
Once the investigation was concluded, and if there was any action, follow-up action, such as court case was concluded, absolutely.
Sheriff, quick question. So some of that's just seems to be process from a linear perspective. So, for example, rather than the sheriff's department authorizing and managing an audit, if the board or the county authorized and managed the audit and then handed over said audit to the sheriff's department. So, I mean, it seems like it's a little bit timing and procedural in that regard. I mean, are they going to do a different job for the sheriff's office than they do for the county?
As far as the scope of it,
Yeah.
no. Again, as far as the integrity of it,
Because if we order it, it's public record. You're
Right.
using then public record to ultimately get to the same result.
Okay, this is Commissioner Cobb. I just have one more question, if you can tell us. Who were your partners that investigated this so far with you, that made the recommendations for the audit?
I believe the state agency that made that recommendation was the Department of Revenue.
Thank you.
So you did have a recommendation from the Kansas Department of Revenue that this is the route you should pursue.
It is their recommendation that we pursue a forensic audit.
Okay.
That's good enough for me.
Okay. So, but the
Were there
time,
any other organizations involved in the investigation?
From the state level,
Yes.
I believe the KBI as well, but as a tertiary, not in depth. A lot of their agents who we have used in the past with this specialized ability are no longer with the Bureau.
Okay. And locally, other than the treasurer's office?
No.
okay. Does anyone else have any concerns about the timing, about the time of year it is? Because we're getting ready to send out them green envelopes, I believe, that want you to pay your taxes. We really need them to be processed in a timely manner so we can get our money. Unless they'll say we don't have to pay our taxes now until this audit's done.
Let me propose this,
Okay.
because coming into this meeting, I was still under the belief that the treasurer was in full support of it based off of our last communication. And it's evident now she has some concerns, timing and even the intrusiveness of it. I understand that. I appreciate that. I would recommend that no action be taken on this morning.
Okay.
Allow time for the treasurer and I to meet with the investigator and perhaps even have a conference call with the individual firm here to maybe we're able to drill down a little bit. Maybe the treasurer is able to provide us information that I don't know. Maybe there's another route that we can take that's not as inexpensive, as intrusive. But at the end of the day, we're all stewards of the taxpayer money. I don't want to spend $70,000 to find out who took $10,000, but I do want to find out who took it.
I do want a conviction
Absolutely.
to the fullest.
And this is because I fully agree. I want to try to find out who took it.
Not probation, jail time.
All right, so to be clear, everybody wants to find out who, and the only way to find out who is through a forensic accountant.
With a
Because in a world where we
50%
can
chance.
put, well, I realize they have to say that. I think they're in the under to promise, over deliver game. But if in the world where we can put somebody on Mars, if we can't figure out the timing of a transaction and what machine it happened on, then we got bigger problems.
I don't think you'll ever find out the timing or the machine. So a certain person voided it. It went to a safe. The safe was, somebody went into the safe and took the money. So the only way to prove who took it was to see who took it.
There's no video.
There's no video. There's
No, but
so
when a
it-
transaction's voided on a computer and the Internet of Things, there is a
But
digital
2 to
record
3 to
of it.
4 people can handle that one transaction.
And then 17 people can see the money.
Why is there no video?
There
I
wasn't
don't
video
know.
at the time. Now there's a video of the safe.
You should have asked that
was-
about Epstein.
That was part of our
Yes.
added, recommendations since the theft occurred.
Yeah.
And they can't figure out who did it doing a 1-year audit, the year of the incident?
Well, that's what I would propose, is do a forensic audit on the year that it happened, and if it comes up with that or more, then look to another year. I'm not opposed to an audit, it's just the timing and the hardship it puts on my office right now.
But so you'd be in support of doing a 1-year audit
Yeah,
when we
for-
know
for the year that the money was
event
stolen.
occurred,
Mhm.
and if that audit, the results of that audit leads the sheriff's office or the auditor to say we need to expand, you'd probably be in support of that if indeed they said that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's where
But
I'm
it's just I would be very comfortable with that.
Okay.
So let's get a hold of the forensic accounting group, Andy, and see if they would agree to that proposal. And by my math, that means they take their cost and divide it by 3. That work for you guys?
Yeah, but I don't think that's the way it works.
That's not.
I would prefer
So,
that
Sheriff,
we did this after
would you prefer to table
January.
this?
And the timing, again, any support, the timing, absolutely, Janice, needs to be with the best interest of your department. So,
Would you Is that still your recommendation to table this till you can meet with everybody and come back?
I believe that's probably the best action
Okay,
at this
you got a
time.
date? You have a date?
I think you could just put it on the table and he'll notify us when everything's ready.
Okay, then we just won't table. We just, no action will be taken then today?
There's no public hearing
Okay.
for this, you don't have to table it today, sir.
All right. Well, I just want to make sure we stay on top of it, because I'd sure like to find out who did it. And when we get done with that one, maybe we can work on our personnel files that are missing.
I thought you'd bring that up.
Well, you know what we have? 68 employees that their driver's license and copies of driver's license and their social security numbers missing out of their files. And taxpayers get to buy LifeLock for 400 employees for eternity now.
Question, was the Kansas Department of Revenue, were they the one, like the 3-year time frame? That was strictly the auditors that came up with that, correct? Or
I believe the 3-year term is a standard,
just based, like.
a year before the year
Kinda
and
gotta
the year
know.
following comparisons.
You gotta have a benchmark.
Yeah, well, if you want to kick this back and try to work out some kind of a protocol, that's fine, but I wanted you to know that I feel like if you want to move ahead, I think the board supports that too.
Well, I think it is beneficial collectively for us to work together and determine the best route forward. But at the end of the day, my main interest is the investigation and getting out of it what we can get out of it.
Okay. All right, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And congrats again to both of you yesterday.
And you too, Commissioner Stevens. We haven't seen any numbers yet.
Right.
Mr. Locker, is there any other administrative business?
I did have one other item just want to bring up.
Okay.
The CARES Act relief fund grant applications, the deadline was technically Sunday, but into Monday we allowed them. Obviously, I had a couple of people who submitted, and I've asked them to update some of their information that they shared, and then hopefully everything will be wrapped up either later today or tomorrow. I'll present that to the committee that you have assigned for the CARES Act relief funds, and then it will come for the full board for consideration. So I just want to give you an update on that.
And that's it.
That's all I have.
I think now would be a good time to acknowledge Kim Buchanan in her retirement. She retired November 1st, the Deputy Director of Emergency Management. Don't recall how many years she had. I remember she started out at the county shop. And she was, right out of high school, I think. So she's been there a long time. So I just want to wish her luck in retirement. I'm sure Mark's got plenty for her to do at home.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Cobb. I agree, but I think that we haven't seen the last of Kim.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Has commissioners had a chance to look at everything on the consent agenda? Does anything need to be pulled off and voted on separately?
This is Commissioner Cobb. I need to have the check registry removed from the consent agenda, please.
Okay.
I move that we accept the consent agenda minus the check registry.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on the consent agenda minus the check registry. Is there any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner Cobb, votes aye.
I did have one quick question. I saw there was a tornado debris expense to HAM, and then we just talked about emergency management. Have we gotten any closer on any type of reimbursement on all of the force majeure costs associated
FEMA?
with it?
FEMA money?
The short answer is no. The long answer is neither has anybody else. I was just on a conference call last week with other county administrators, and that exact topic of conversation came up. Douglas County happened to be on that call as well, and we're all in the same status, which is we've submitted what we need to, and we're just waiting to hear from FEMA, and that has been the status for at least 7 months.
So is that we'll reach out to all of our existing and new elected officials, or no?
I I mean, it never hurts to apply pressure if you can get to the right person. So.
You know, there was a news story, I wrote it down, I think it was back in July, that FEMA was fully funded. And so,
Where did it go?
where did it go? And also, they would have gotten new money in October, right? Federal government's October.
I don't know that we have any indication that it's a lack of funding as much as it's a lack of, I guess, progress on their staff's part. So
Okay.
everything's been submitted. We're in a holding pattern, waiting on FEMA to take the next step, to my understanding.
We haven't fired up the printing presses on the money yet, so shouldn't.
Okay, that was my.
Yeah, I got that. I wrote all that down. I got it in the office there. I thought it was kind of unusual that they're fully funded. They said there was no funding issues at FEMA.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve the check register as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and second on the check registry. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner Cosgrove abstained.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we ready for the donation agreement for St. Luke's Cushing Hospital?
Yes, Commissioners, this is the formal donation agreement. Mentioned last week we would have this on. The appropriate motion is for the county, the chairman of the board to sign this. I don't believe we've received the updated signature page yet, but we'll have that for you. I've asked for it, just waiting for St. Luke's to provide it.
Okay. All right. So are we ready for EMS?
Do you want to approve the
Okay.
St. Luke's?
Mr. Van Paris?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I believe the appropriate motion would be to accept the donation of St. Luke's Cushing Hospital building and grounds as described in the donation agreement, and to authorize the chairman to execute the agreement upon final preparation.
Vicki, you want to make that motion, given how hard you worked to help make it happen?
Commissioner Cos, did you hear that?
Apparently not.
Commissioner Cos,
Yes, I heard it.
You want to make a motion?
do you want to make a motion to accept the St. Cushing St. Luke's?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the donation agreement for St. Luke's Cushing?
This is going to be really good for the county.
Absolutely. Okay, voting?
Aye.
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 I'm so sorry.
All right. All right, Mr. Miller, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Commissioners?
Morning.
Good.
Commissioners, I have forwarded in a proposal to the Commission for your recommendation to adopt a proposed pay plan for EMS technicians. Again, in the analysis that outlined the necessity for this, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have in regards.
I don't have any questions on it. I think it's pretty clean. As long as you feel confident it's going to get you where you need to be to
Commissioner,
recruit and retain.
This was not just out of the administrative side. This was the entire. We got in the entire staff, worked with the staff to try to look at surrounding areas, the metropolitan, and really get to the forefront of what the issue is. Again, 2 years ago, as in the analysis, we did address the pay plan for EMS. That addressed recruitment side of it because that was kind of that starting wage. Where we've fallen behind is obviously in the retention side, as our average year of employee is about that 3-year mark, and they move on to get that additional pay. So what this does is it adopts a plan that will not only address recruitment, but also on the retention side to really kind of match and exceed some of the others in the Kansas City Metro to hopefully combat longevity within our department. Quite frankly, I'm tired of being a training ground.
Well, you're good at your job.
Right now, the circumstance that we only have one hospital available at that one, we really need to make sure that we follow EMS.
couldn't hear.
We couldn't understand you, Commissioner Cause.
I'm sorry, I just said that I fully support this because I honestly believe that we have got to make sure that we keep our EMS staff in place, especially given the fact that we have lost one of our hospitals in the community.
I agree. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns on Mr. Miller's pay plan proposal?
I just have one question on like, I'm sure you compared other counties. How does this put us, like, in comparison to, like, Johnson County? Even with this increase, it's still not going to
We will be
their level, will we?
We will be in front of them.
We'll be, okay. Because I think that's they're sucking off a lot of our people.
Quite frankly, we've played ping pong with Johnson County for many, many years with salaries. We increase, they increase, we increase. The difference is we have not had a retention plan, which is that advancement. Our advancement follows a pay plan that is not as rapid or accelerated as other EMS services, and that's where we end up falling behind. So even if we were ahead on the recruitment side to bring someone in a higher wage, in that 3-year mark, the individual that went to the other service was ahead because the advancement is that much greater. This addresses that.
Well, I think it's great you've been able to build it into the revenue collections. I just wish it could be way more. So appreciate all you guys do.
Right. Yeah, I know your staff has been tasked this year, that's for sure. So, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve Mr. Miller's pay plan.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the pay plan and voting?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Boston, aye.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Miller, I had one question for you. And I don't know, can you tell me what's the state, do they document by county influenza, seasonal influenza? Or how is that reported?
Seasonal influenza is not a reportable disease into the state. Only deaths involved with children with influenza is. So influenza-like illness is a hospital-based and clinician-based that they enter into that data, and that's where that data comes from. That is not a reportable disease like the list that is currently out on reportable diseases from the Kansas state.
Okay, and like I know there was a statistic from KDHE that said seasonal influenza / pneumonia. Mm-hmm. How do they come to that?
That's where it comes from.
Reported from the hospitals.
It comes from reported for in hospital and also doctor's office and clinics and such. That's how that comes about. And it's not a mandatory, so not all clinics, not all of that is reported into the state on an equal basis. So it's not a mandated reporting is what I was getting at with, unlike where we're at right now with COVID-19. COVID-19 is a reportable, mandated report that within 4 hours of a positive, that has to be reported to the state.
That's interesting. That I would think now that we're getting into the flu season, maybe the state would want to kind of.
They'll have to make that change and do those, and then we'll answer to that as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thanks, Shane.
We appreciate your
Thanks for
staff
all you
and
do.
everything your staff does. All right. So we appreciate everything you and your staff do. You can't tell who's talking. Can't see who's talking, yeah. All right, we're ready for planning and zoning. Crystal, how are you today?
Well, Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Morning.
Great.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The first request that I have before you is you have a memo regarding the special use permit request for Tri-Hole Crane. I believe everybody here is familiar with that. We were waiting on a non-exhaustive study from the Kansas Department of Transportation. I have not received that yet. I was originally informed that that should be here by mid-October. It is not. Therefore, that outstanding requirement that the board asked staff to take care of has not been fulfilled through no fault of staff. Simply, I assume it is because KDOT is probably overworked and understaffed, similar to lots of places. I don't have a time frame for when that will be in. I would not expect it at this point to be in any time before Christmas. I would assume that we would be looking at the middle of January. I have asked. I have not been given an update on that either. So my recommendation is that we table this request until sometime in January.
Do you have a date in January?
I don't have a date specific in January.
I believe our meeting dates would be like the 13th, 20th, or 27th.
But we have to do a date set certain instead of bringing it to us once the report's actually been received.
We tabled it to a date certain. and
Commissioner
that's
Stupke,
today.
I would advise that we table it to a date certain.
Okay.
Okay. Then
What were those dates again?
13.
So, I left the 6th off just because it's the first meeting of the year. So the 13th, 20th, and 27th would all be dates in January that we
I
meet.
move that we table this till the 13th of January.
Second.
I have a motion and second to table Tri-Hall Crane till the 13th of January, 2021. Is there any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Aye. Mr. Chairman, for clarification, that would be at 9 a.m. on that day.
At 9 a.m. on that day.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner Cobb votes nay.
Okay. All right. Ready for your next one?
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a request to approve Resolution 2020-43. This is a special use permit renewal for McLeod Ornamental Iron. Again, this is a renewal. The applicant has been operating in this location for several years now. I know he has at least one other permit already. There have been no changes to the operations. He does exactly like it says. He creates iron work, sometimes cattle gates and things like that. He also does some farm repair. He has minimal storage, but that's all taken care of inside of his building. The Planning Commission voted 9-0 to recommend approval of this resolution.
Okay. And he does a lot of ag, so even ag businesses have to have a special use permit or not?
So I think it's important to differentiate between agritourism and a business that is agriculturally related.
Okay.
While this may be agriculturally related, it is not the only thing that he does. He does work on farm equipment and such, but he also, makes lawn ornaments. And
Does that make a difference? Because a lot of the other ag statutes, they changed that to specifically say it doesn't have to be exclusively used for ag. If it's used partially for ag, then it counts as exempt.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the applicant has chosen to apply for a special use permit, and as Crystal told you, he's been in operation for several years. It's an ongoing business. I think the aspects of the agricultural use are of interest, but I don't think should complicate the approval of this special use permit.
No, I just don't want to see people have to go through the process if they don't need to. But there's no problems with this one. It is a 10-year renewal, and I'm sure he's already been in business 10 years. So there's no questions or concerns. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution, what is it?
I make a motion we approve Resolution 2020-43, special use permit, McLeod Ornamental Iron and Farm Repair.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Mr. Cobb votes aye.
Okay. That all you have today?
Thanks,
all.
Chris.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Crystal.
See you in a bit.
We're ready for Mr. Knoll. How are you today?
Good.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. Got several items here today for your consideration. So we will work. The first item for your consideration today is an amendment to Resolution 2019-20. This is amending a current policy that is for the closure or gating of roadways upon certain criteria of county roads. The request does still have to come through the petition process. The only change to the current policy that is before you today is that the new resolution will allow no more than 2 residential structures to be serviced by the roadway that is now gated. I think this is in line with your previous cross-access easement policies, and it was before you, brought before you by Crystal a couple weeks ago for an individual, where this method was applied to this resolution to allow the building of a home. I'm open to discuss this, answer any questions you may have about the current policy or its amendment.
Why was the change advocated?
The change in this policy advocated, you guys offered, 2 weeks ago, you approved a exception to the policy, and you had previously approved the cross-access easement policy, and so those roadways would be allowed to be gated. This is a gating policy. It does not vacate the roadway, and so that if there are existing utilities, it's most commonly used on dead-end roads or roads that aren't maintained to a travelway standard.
This wouldn't affect the fellow out on Alexander Road that we've been dealing with, that guy.
He would be able to apply this gating policy to that, on that specific application. I mean, does it impact him? No, but because of the nature of the roadway that you're discussing, he could apply through this process.
Okay, so it would just...
But this process also requires you to have the agreement with any other property owners who use that roadway as an access to their property or that roadway abuts. If not all neighbors or not all property owners who abut that roadway agree to the gating or closure of the roadway, then generally that would not be accepted.
That's the way it currently reads?
Yes.
So yeah.
Currently, you just can't build. You can't have homes on it. That's what this is changing. Previously, you could only do that on a roadway that did not have any residents on it. This change will allow up to 2 residents.
So you're a couple of weeks ago, there was a property owner who the roadway had previously been gated. The gate had been removed. It's a dead-end roadway. It serviced 3 properties, one of which 2 of which are owned by the same landowner. He desired to build a home on one of them. He's in the process of getting the necessary signatures from the other property owner. But more or less, it excludes the county from maintaining his driveway because he is gating the roadway, and so we're not responsible for the maintenance of that roadway, yet allows him to build a house beyond the gate utilizing the easement, which would be on both property owners 20 feet to access his property.
Okay, that makes good sense, but I've been dealing with this other guy.
Well, this one here just makes it a shared driveway, and the taxpayers don't have to pay for it.
We don't have to worry about mowing it or grading it or removing the snow.
And their taxes are the same as if it was a public road.
This just formalizes a change in policy that you granted an exception to already. So.
Any questions, Mr. Knoll, over this policy?
Nope.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-44.
Second. Have a motion and second. Any further discussion on the policy? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner Cox votes aye.
All right.
The next agenda item for your consideration is a yearly renewal of the board-approved resolution 2020-15. This is concerning the dust control request form and the cost of the dust control application. The current request form and the current cost amount is not going to change for the 2021 cycle unless the board wishes to or desires to change the current policy. It was $19.50 a linear foot for the application of 3 coats of chip and seal onto the gravel roadway under the previous request form, and after doing a cost analysis of this past year, it is going to remain the same. It was within pennies of the same amount after we did the request, so we were just requesting that it remain the same, and we will do a yearly cost analysis about this time of year. The current policy does limit the is to no more than 6 installations countywide, based upon the fact that it's logistically we are trying to cover more than 100 miles a year, which this year we covered 106, 107 miles of chip and seal roadway, and we have these other areas that aren't within a normal maintenance cycle that would require us to mobilize our crews to other portions of the county, not anywhere near where we're trying to complete our normal maintenance.
Yeah, mobilization is a big deal in efficiency. So when you bid your oil, it'll be in February?
End of January, beginning of February.
Right. So if we have to, for some reason, if petroleum goes through the roof, we could always go back to this.
Yes.
Unless somebody's already prepaid.
Yes, unless somebody's already prepaid. We have had a lot of calls. We had kind of, we just recently, within the last probably 3 weeks ago, finished the chip and seal for the year, and we did the cost analysis. I believe that we will have some people come in before that February deadline because we are no longer accepting an unlimited amount of these, and so there are some people who may fill up in the next coming month and a half. We may get our 6 locations. So
this is, and Bill, just to clarify, this is 6 locations, not 6 homeowners. So, for example, you have 5 homeowners on 1,700 linear feet of roadway. That's one. So it's not to exceed 1,700 per location, 6 locations. I'm just trying to make sure if you had 6 people on one particular roadway, that doesn't count as 6 projects. That's only one mobilization. It's all continuous.
If it's a continuous location, I would consider that one location.
Okay.
If 6 landowners came together and paid for it all together, and it's less than 1,700 feet, which is the maximum amount. Now, I don't know. We'd have to come back maybe before the board to have a discussion if 6 landowners each paid for 1,700 feet individually, whether or not how we would want to handle that situation. But it is hard to write a policy that addresses every scenario. So, yes, generally, if it's at one location, say 2 landowners each paid for 600 feet next to each other, we would consider that one location.
Okay.
Any other questions on this policy?
Yeah, this is going to be kind of hard to explain, but what do we do, or what should, this policy, like you said, it's hard to write a policy to address every scenario, but if a street was separated, isolated by a county boundary, for instance, or city limits, say it was in an island by itself, and say it was a gravel road that needed maintained by the county that got chip and sealed, if the landowners paid for that chip and seal, but it's not connected to any other county road because the only way to get to it is through a city limits or through another county.
Shawnee?
For example, Snake Farm Road.
Oh, no.
There's a little segment of Snake Farm Road. The only way to get to it is to go
Douglas County,
all the way around to
Jefferson County, and Douglas County.
So if they were to chip and seal that segment of gravel road, they would fall under this policy where they're not connected to another county road. Is that their fault that they're separated, isolated by the schematics of the road network? So if they paid to chip and seal that road, are we going to say, well, you have to pay for maintenance too because it's not connected to a county road? Well, it's not really their fault that they're segregated. And there's there's several of these. The reason I'm bringing it up is because there's one that's getting ready to happen. You have to go through the city, this little segment of Ottawa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
an
not
L
connected
shape.
to a county road. It's isolated.
Goes west and then north.
You have to go into the city to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
So if they paid to pave the road, are we going to say, well, you have to pay for the maintenance too because you're not connected to a county road network? So what do we do about that?
Well, I think that I think ultimately it's a decision the board maybe needs to have a discussion about here today, but I think that you need to look at those 2 scenarios completely differently. Mm-hmm. Snake Farm Road or a
Do we have an
outlying
agreement with
gravel
Jason
roadway
County?
that does not connect into any other hard surface roadway, I think our current policy is completely clear on. We would not do future maintenance on that unless the person was requesting it. And Snake Farm Road is currently under a 1960s memorandum of understanding that we have updated and that we're going to be presenting to Jefferson County, and we will be presenting to all of the other jurisdictions that we share maintenance of roadways with, like MOUs, in the coming weeks. But the question regarding the cities and maybe state highways, I think the intention of the current policy is to connect into county roadways, because you could, from a mobilization standpoint, you can just turn down those roadways. If they connect into a hard surface roadway, or you have to go through the city, like in that instance, I think that we're open to board direction on how the commission, the consensus of the board is on that opinion. But from a maintenance perspective, I think that the intention of the policy originally, as it was constructed, was to try to limit that mobilization and have it connect into hard surface roadways where we could maintain it concurrently with the other ones. And so we have had requests for these to extend off of state highways, and I am familiar with the request for the road that connects. You have to actually, we would be mobilizing through the city streets in order to get to that roadway. And so they would connect to hard surface roadways. And so I think now is an appropriate time, since we're discussing this policy, for the board to have a discussion regarding those roadways, so we are clear and we can offer a concise answer to the public that may be calling and inquiring about those roads.
Well, even if we're not doing asphalt maintenance, we still have to do gravel road maintenance on it. We're still having to take equipment through the city to maintain these.
Or through adjacent county.
And it's not seen different now. You know, we're not charging them for the gravel maintenance.
I'd actually rather see them do it. And you might only do asphalt maintenance.
Less maintenance.
Less maintenance.
Yeah, my point exactly. It's like, it's really helping the situation, but by policy, we're saying, nope, we can't.
You're saying by policy they'd be paying the maintenance for it. Yeah.
So in those instances, that's why I'm bringing it up. It's like, if they're connected to a state highway or a city hard surface street or another county's hard surface street, are we going to?
I'd like to have the discussion. I think that the policy is pretty clear on like the other county, because Snake Farm Road is about the only location where you actually travel through another county, and we're not currently maintaining that at all.
And it's gravel too.
And it's gravel, and it connects to miles and miles of gravel. And so I think specifically from a department standpoint, if you wanted to offer some clear direction regarding those people who come in and wish to connect into a city street, specifically the group that has already kind of brought the request forward through Commissioner Culbertson, and then those people who are connecting to KDOT highways, but do not connect into our county road network where we're maintaining asphalt roadways specifically, would be the two areas that I'd like some.
Yeah, I mean, so to your point, Jeff, couldn't we just, if it's continuous to hard surface, regardless of whether that's a county road, we're going to waive the maintenance associated with it. So whether that's a city, adjacent county, whatever that nuanced scenario is, we're not going to penalize you because it's not connecting to a county roadway. You're connecting to an existing hard surface roadway. It's just not our hard surface.
That's my idea. That's why I'm bringing it up to the board.
Okay.
I think you guys have to decide that.
No, like I said, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I had to deal with them islands.
And I thought there was
including snow removal.
Yeah, like Bill's talking about, the agreement with the adjacent county.
You had to have county grader come in the city, and then people would call and want to know why the county motor graders in the city of Leaven were plowing snow.
I think this map's wrong. I think there's one more.
Well, let's don't bring up anything.
Talk to the map guy.
Yeah. What year was that map? What year was that map printed off?
I think it's been there since I started.
I don't know who that map. I think it's
I can probably tell you a few more. But
There's one in Wyandotte County.
Yeah, we're not looking for trouble. We're not looking for any trouble here. Yeah, it's just. So you want to?
Do you need like a motion to?
To accept this form and to amend the policy, or I guess it would be amending the policy that any, if the roadway is connected to any paved
With the
surface.
exception of any hard surface connection.
Well, it says only installation requests that connect to an existing hard paved roadway are available for the 5-year financing. And it also states that any dust control installation is not connected to an existing hard pave will not receive future maintenance. So I think that it describes it as a hard paved roadway, not necessarily a county roadway. I think at the time, it's open for interpretation, and so
I think you need to look at the policy to make sure that the policy is worded the same as the form.
I think that we could even table it 1 week, and I could bring back the same policy
with the
a
change.
little bit changed wording.
That would be the
too.
best. Yeah, that'd be the
I
best
think
way
that
to
would
do
be better than just having it in a motion. Having it in writing before you to reconsider next week would be the ideal situation.
I like it. So I make a motion.
I agree.
So I make a motion. We table this until next week.
Second. Have a motion second to table the dust control for county roads. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner Cox votes aye.
Okay, now we're ready for the big one.
Yes. So now we're moving on. Today for your consideration is the acceptance of the proposal by the ARIP Group to conduct a feasibility study for the Eastern Gateway Bridge project. The study is a primary keystone that would determine the viability of the Eastern Gateway project as a public-private partnership. It will establish the level of funding that may be available for the project from the private sector and what portion of the project would have to be publicly funded. ARIP is an independently operated investment design group with years of national and international experience in this arena. They are familiar with our geographic region as they are invested in the single terminal project at the KCI Airport. The proposed study is an 8-week study and has a not-to-exceed cost of $100,000. After the conclusion of the work session that we previously had, we did reach out to both the City of Leavenworth and the City of Lansing regarding the initial study by Trans Systems to see if they'd had any City Commission input or comment regarding that. Neither had since the time that study had been completed. The City of Lansing, their city administrator, stated that there are many members of their commission who do support this, but it had not formally been brought up, so a letter of support could not be concluded. But in concept, I believe that they are in support of the application. And the City of Leavenworth, Mr. Kramer, the city administrator, had forwarded over their previous letter from, I believe, January, when Commissioner Culberson may have attended one of their city commission meetings. And they were interested more in a all-encompassing infrastructure analysis study that would include the Eastern Gateway, the Centennial Bridge, K7, K5, and an outer loop possibility. And so I think that's an update of the input that I had received from them. So I think at this time I'll turn it over to the commission to ask me questions or discuss it.
Bill, real quick. So we've had lots of questions and there's been support and then back and forth. All of it seems to circle, or some of it stem from Centennial. And so while we're having this conversation, I just thought if you have an update, great. If not, I'd love to get one. But I think more recently it's been shared that either the timing of the Centennial project and even some of the funding has been identified. Going back to when I first joined the board, it was really my understanding, or it was shared, that that was really all figured out. The design was done, the money was secured, it was all just about timing. So we've only been talking about something incremental to, right, in addition to. There's all this confusion about in replacement of, which is ridiculous. Just wondered real quick while we're having the conversation if you've heard anything more recently on Centennial, because I feel like something came up in a Port Authority meeting, or maybe it was LCDC, I can't remember. But
So the governor announced the Centennial Bridge project as part of like the Vision 2050 plan, I believe it's referred to as, or the Infrastructure 2050 plan. Trans Systems is one of the design firms that is a part of that, and their basically principal engineer, who was also the one who was the lead engineer for this Eastern Gateway Bridge concept study, had indicated that he had not received any notification from KDOT about proceeding with that project or a time frame on that project.
Okay.
I will state that this study did include some traffic information that Trans Systems completed for the Centennial Bridge. It did not include a removal or a full replacement of the Centennial Bridge, but it did show moderate traffic growth on the Centennial Bridge over the course of the next 25 years. And so it did not include this initial study, and the proposal from a Eastern Gateway, or this feasibility study, is not a proposal to eliminate that crossing or to reduce funding for it necessarily. It is a study that is to investigate the financial feasibility and where that break-even point is from a public-private partnership perspective. And so I guess that is probably the best that I can answer that question at this time.
Okay, so the governor made an announcement, but it's still, there's not near the clarity that some have said there was in regards to timing and funding and all things.
Yes, and I'm not aware that they've started or engaged in the NEPA process or where that is in design. I just know that at the time that the initial Trans System study was being completed for the Eastern Gateway, Frank Weatherford had indicated that he had not been provided any information of when that project might actually move forward, because he had been requested of that information a bunch of times, and because the governor made the announcement, and he was unaware of it, and he was under the understanding that he would be the lead engineer on that project.
Well, last question on that would be, is there any chance that, again, given the depth of this study, it would provide further detail on Centennial? It might actually give us accurate statistics on K7, which everybody's questioned how relative the numbers are currently. Is it fair to think that some of the due diligence might help us to better understand forecasted traffic for Centennial, forecasted traffic for K7, 435, all of those impacted roadways as a part of what this project could do? So there could be some benefit. Is that fair, or am I overreaching?
I think that will be part of their analysis, but they're specifically, this feasibility, I think that they will have to analyze the existing traffic counts, both for K7 and the Centennial Bridge and K5's corridor and the 435, 152 interchange area, in order to come up with a traffic generation model for this location. But how much of that information is looked at from a holistic standpoint, and how much of it is just used to generate a traffic count for this structure, because their sole concern is traffic volume versus revenue from tolling of the roadway. And so I don't think that they're going to look at those at a best case scenario. I think that they'll look at it as there's this much traffic existing, but they are not going to do an analysis that indicates much information on those, I don't believe.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Paz. My understanding was that the city of Leavenworth would have been or would be interested in assisting with paying for a study that expanded the scope, at least to some extent. Is that correct?
Leavenworth or Lansing?
Leavenworth. From the letter that we received, I've had some subsequent conversations, and so I think that if we can find more partners in doing the analysis and the study, if we could, just expand the scope, maybe to look at just that corridor right, through there to make sure that we're not missing something or that there's not more opportunity.
Okay.
Well, I think going back to even, pre-pandemic, the discussion was, can we get a committee that has all of the necessary stakeholders? So you have Leavenworth, Lansing, Fort Leavenworth, Platte County, go down the list, or at least on the Kansas side, put together a committee with all of the stakeholders. And I think we've received emails even just this week of several committees, quote-unquote groups that already exist that might be able to assist in some of this. So while I don't love the idea of spinning up more committees and more bureaucracy, I do think there are some groups that we could leverage that do have good representation from all of those areas to help with this. And that was one of my recommendations, was to go to, present to that group, the Port Authority, for example, as a funding mechanism to get further down the road. So
I will state that this is not the group that would do that type of study. This group is only interested in the Eastern Gateway. If we were going to go with a encompassing analysis of all roadway networks in the Leavenworth-Lansing area, these people are only interested in private investment, and so they aren't interested in doing any studies that would be like the ones. This is specific to tolling of a roadway in private partnership, and so it is a investment study as much as anything. It is not a traffic study for any other purposes other than investment. And so from a county growth perspective or a future development perspective, they are only looking at this from a financial feasibility perspective.
And I agree. I mean, if you open it up to every singular roadway that's been discussed over the last number of decades, the scope and cost of this thing and our ability to even complete it, I'd question. So the Port Authority has been, identified as the economic driver. This is an economic development project. We've approved for them to have the funding to help with projects like this. So we just needed to know what it was going to cost and ultimately what the scope, what you're going to get for that cost. But they've got representation of the majority stakeholders in Leavenworth County. So I think that would be the right group for us to take this to for the funding and understanding exactly what you're going to get for it.
I think that what they're wanting to have a conversation, at least from the information that I've been relayed, and Commissioner Cause, you may elaborate on this, the information that I've received is they're not to a point where they're fully supportive of this until it was identified as the number one project in this overall outreaching study. And that I would compare more to like the recent planning and zoning comprehensive plan. It's going to be an all-encompassing study regionally of your roadway infrastructure network that's going to include KDOT roadways that are currently in existence. And so that's a different scope that's going to cost probably more than this entire feasibility study would. I'm open to having that. I'm fine with that. I'm just wanting to make sure that I clarify that that's what that is, and this is what this is. So you're looking at what exactly you're considering here today.
Okay, this is Commissioner Cox, but we would be potentially considering assisting with the funding of both.
Well, you'd be considering the engage. If we want to go back to the cities, in the city of Leavenworth, in the city of Lansing, the city of Lansing has kind of offered their support for this feasibility study in support of this project. So we're specifically, I think, talking about the city of Leavenworth in the Port Authority. And so if we were to table this or pass on this proposal at this time, then I think at that point you go back to these other entities, specifically the Port Authority and the city of Leavenworth, and you start to open a discussion about what it is they would like to see a study look like to identify future projects. But at that point, I think most of those projects aren't the type of projects that are public-private partnerships. They are more KDOT future vision type projects that aren't going to involve tolling. And so you're putting together a plan that's something that you would use then to propose to the state offices, the Department of Transportation and the governor's office, to be included in whatever plan comes out after the 2050 plan.
My concern about it is, what they say about committees, take minutes and waste hours. So this concept of this bridge, I think that we've been showing leadership on it. Going down this other route, I would hate to see it become a vortex that just destroys the project.
Well, I'd still like to get the support of the Port Authority on this.
Maybe we could have a work session with the Port Authority.
Well, they have a meeting, is it next week, the 12th?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so I guess what I was trying to recommend is I want to formally go in front of the Port Authority, present these options, why we maybe aren't in support of expanding it to 3 other roadways that aren't in scope currently, and we're not going to probably toll anyway, and understand why we think this is a project that's as viable or more viable than a lot of what's been submitted to the Port Authority, in all seriousness. And then if they decide not to fund it, then we can bring it back in front of the board and figure out if we're going to fund it.
Because this is the tricky part. Go ahead, Vicki.
Yeah, I was just, I support the concept of having another route to get in and out of Leavenworth County, 100%. I'm just saying, what I was asking is were we looking at or talking about doing the private-public partnership aspect of things, but also more of a comprehensive plan for future traffic growth and patterns?
I was just going to say, I don't want to lose the momentum that we're building on this project. This is the tricky part where it's hard to get everybody at the table at the same time because some groups don't like it if they weren't asked in the beginning to be part of it. So even though I don't want to table this and wait, I want to get as many partners as we can and explain it to them and give them a chance to understand what's going on. So I wouldn't want to table this for more than a week or so, but at the same time.
Well, would you want to wait till we have at least Port Authority has a meeting and LCDC has a meeting?
Yeah.
And that's more than a week.
Yeah.
That'd be toward the end of the month.
Is anybody directly reaching out again to the city of Leavenworth?
I reached out to him on Monday.
I mean that's a group that, in a perfect world, we would have the city of Leavenworth 100% behind this.
Well, and they're, like I said, they're worried about Centennial Bridge.
Right.
So
that's the issue.
From all the conversations I've had with them, they're going to be the least likely to get on board with this.
Okay. This is Commissioner but I think that we might be better served to try to make contact and schedule a work session of all of those parties. Again, invite them to come rather than attending 3 different meetings or what, kind of staggered, to bring the people all together at the table and have the conversation.
Okay.
I think that's.
I mean, you generally have city participation at the Port Authority meeting. When's the next Port Authority meeting?
Next week?
Oh, it was the 24th.
23rd?
Oh, no, it's LCDC next week.
I think it's the 24th.
Yeah.
The LCDC infrastructure meeting was last week. So I think it's monthly, so it wouldn't be until December.
Okay.
So what if
put this on the agenda the first week of December?
Yeah, what if we set up a work session and then bring it back right after that work session?
I like that. And
that way everybody's in the same room
Mm-hmm.
instead of going to 3 different meetings.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Are you saying a work session, or did you want to coordinate that through the Port Authority? Because it sounded like Commissioner Shimke was saying they already meet and they have the city participating.
I think a county commission work session would be better. That way it's more neutral and we can get more
people show up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Well,
I think you'll get city
a
representation, and you're not going to
agenda
get
items. That's all that's being discussed, so that there's not all of the other
And we've made the invitation.
information exchange.
And it's whether they accept it or not, then is not our fault.
That'd probably be fastest.
Correct.
when do you see that?
But you're probably looking at trying to coordinate something by next week or the week after because of holidays.
Week after.
So do it.
We got
Yeah.
Tuesday,
Before
we're having a
Thanksgiving?
meeting on Tuesday, and then you got Veterans Day.
The 18th?
Is that the week after?
Work session on the 18th?
That's what we would shoot for.
And then the Port Authority is going to meet on the 23rd, and then we can have it back in front of us on the 6th. I made up that December date. I don't know.
Sounds good.
Is that a motion?
So we'll try for a work session on the 18th.
Yeah.
We will invite.
We're going to
We'll worry
have
about
a
the
work
18th
session.
first.
The Port Authority will have its meeting after our work session to discuss the work session, I hope. And then ultimately it'll be in front of this board on the first week of December.
First week of December. And that's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Cosgrove, aye.
All right. Sounds good.
Bill, thank you. I know you've put a lot of time and energy and effort and work in this. That's not lost on us. We're
And everything.
we want to make sure these things get funded. We're just trying to figure out the
Kind of
right
makes
way
the
to do
next
it. So.
topic.
Yeah, the next topic's mute. Ultimately, at some point, if this is accepted, we have to have legal counsel.
Right.
Exactly.
With specialized training.
It's two requests, but I'm thinking of it as one, and it's $175,000. So.
Do we need to make a separate motion for the next item?
Commissioners, it might actually accomplish moving towards the goal of having that gateway actualized by doing that. That is a very, very specialized field of law, and although I have a very high opinion of my own legal skills, I strongly support the retention of that firm.
So I make a motion when we move the item of Ballard and Spar Eastern Gateway Bridge Project to that 6th meeting? Was it the 6th?
First week in December.
First week of December. I
December.
didn't look at the calendar.
That's fine.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Cosgrove, aye.
Okay. All right. Anything else before this board at this time? Anybody got anything to report on? I know elections are over, so maybe we can get back to...
They are?
Well,
Getting there.
Tuesday has came and gone.
Got it.
And
Yeah, this is Vicki. There were, Mr. Cos, there were a lot of, we had a lot of, there's additional ballots to be counted this morning. They could be finished by now, but a lot of the advanced vote ballots were dropped off at the polling site. There were quite a number of those to go through this morning, as well as provisional ballots. So there might be a little bit of delay before the final tallies are completed.
Okay. Do we have any idea when we will be able to canvass this election?
I think it's 2 weeks from today.
No sooner than the 16th.
No sooner than the 16th. Okay. All right. Well, I know the clerk staff and all the volunteers and all the poll workers really worked very hard on this election. I don't think they've ever seen anything like this.
A lot of first-time
Yes, they
voters, which
did.
was awesome.
And I think sounds like everything went well. Don't think there's really any problems. I think, we need to recognize that staff for all the hard work and all the volunteers. My goodness. There's so many volunteers to help with this. And everybody stayed healthy, it sounds like. That's good. So
I feel like we got profiled a little bit. My township had to only go in one specific line. I couldn't go to the other two that were open. It felt kind of like Walmart.
I see.
But no, everybody did a great job. They really
You
did. They were
choose
awesome.
you had the express lane?
Yeah, no, I couldn't express it.
Okay.
I've really gained appreciation for the work that the county clerk does.
Oh, my goodness.
She has, especially election time.
Mm-hmm.
She's very appreciated.
Yeah.
Nope. Great job by all.
Great job. There you go. Okay, and I guess I'll entertain a motion.
You still have public comment.
Public comment.
Oh, we still have a public comment? Okay.
think
On
you
a
did that one.
non-agenda item? Okay, I didn't have that on the list. All right.
Good afternoon, or I guess almost
Still
afternoon, isn't it?
Morning.
Ed Urban, 13561 246th Street. I think you guys know who I am. Kind of glad that the Tri-Hall was tabled today. I guess you're still waiting on some information there from Sarah Peters at KDOT. And I do have a few comments here and trying to see if we can come up with some kind of dialogue here to maybe get this taken care of one way or another. We kind of came up with some ideas here on ways that we might be able to address this. I do have two different issues here. I was wanting to talk about this at the beginning of the meeting. For some reason, I guess there was miscommunication or something. I wasn't given a chance to do that. But so I do have two different things here I want to talk about. First of all, if the Tri-Hall SUP is approved, these are some of the things that we think should be done in order to see this approved. One, the SUP is limited in narrative, okay? And that seems to be on all SUPs. But one of the things not mentioned in there is the salvage. And so the way we think that that can be resolved is to two different ways. One, the salvage be removed from the property, or there be another SUP for the salvage. Number two, liability insurance. I went back and looked at a whole bunch of different SUPs, and it seemed to be a common denominator in a lot of them that there needs to be some liability. And resolutions 2015-44, 2018-18, they're used as examples of where there should be some liability on this SUP. And it's too bad Crystal's not here with us yet. Hopefully she can maybe...
She snuck in on
you. Are here. Thank you. But I think that needs to be on the SUP. It needs to name the county as a holder. Number
What was the
three,
second resolution you...
What was that, Mike?
The second resolution you cited, what was the number?
2018-18
Okay, thanks.
and 2015-44.
Thank you.
Okay? Number three, berm and trees to provide noise and visual barriers for the construction material. And I'm going to cite Resolution 2023, and I think you're all familiar with that one. Number four, noise control of equipment as referred in Resolution 2023, again, as an example. Dust abatement and road improvements as referred in Resolution 2023. And I heard Rocky and Holly get up here and talk about, the road and the traffic on it. And, we use that road as one of the ways to get into our property as well. And there is a tremendous amount of dust on that property. And I'm not blaming the holes totally for all the dust that's on that road, okay? I mean, there's another SUP that was approved for Twisted Vine down the road, and they're bringing a lot of traffic on that road. And so I think that we need to address the dust abatement on that section of the road. I think that would be a constructive thing that could be included in this SUP. Number six, annual traffic impact fee moved as referred to in Resolution 2016-11, okay? And what I'm referring to in that is, I know in previous discussions it was talked about where if they were going to look for an industrial site or something like that there is a traffic impact fee until that other person moved. And I don't know, on this resolution, in this SUP, I think that was included, at least initially. And then number seven, limited hours, and I know that's been addressed in the current SUP. Another thing, number eight, that has not been addressed, and that is no burning, and I would say that would be per KDHE. Another thing that number nine, there's no safety protocols listed on this SUP, and I'm kind of surprised that we don't have at least a memo in there from Chuck there. And then number 10, what's the size of the contractor yard? I mean, there is no information in this SUP about what size the contractor yard is. I mean, we know that the property is 40 acres, but we know that the contractor yard is not taking up 40 acres, okay? So I think there needs to be something concrete about that.
All right.
I do have one other thing.
Thank you. Your time's up. Your 5 minutes up.
Ed, if you want to email us, that'd be great.
You can email us.
What's that now?
You can email us the other part of it.
Okay, well, it's a whole different other,
Your 5 minutes is up.
I just want to make sure it's called to your attention and that we could potentially maybe look at a work session or something to address the issue.
Just email us.
So email each one of you on that, okay?
Yeah, please do.
Copy, just BOCC. Copy the board.
Or if you want to come back next week.
Well, I took annual leave from my job today to be here.
Emails.
And so, I mean,
That way we
it's kind of a hardship for me to actually,
That way
take
we
time
all-
out of my job to come visit with you. And I know that you have.
We're trying to get it, I'd like to see the neighbors all work.
Well, I think you can see that. I mean, I'm trying to create some dialogue here, okay? And
We can't open up a
if
public
nothing else,
hearing again.
maybe we can.
We're done with public comment. We cannot open this back up because it could be considered a public hearing again.
And just send
Just send us an email.
Okay.
Send us an email.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks,
All right.
Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, anything else? Any other public comment on non-agenda items? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Commissioner Cobb votes aye.